Welcome to the Still Curtain podcast. It's Monday, October 13th, and the Pittsburgh Steelers hold a 3-game advantage in the loss column over the Cincinnati Bengals for first place in the AFC North and are finally the betting favorites to win the division over the Baltimore Ravens. I'm Josh Yourish, and today we'll dig into the quarterback's performance with the weekly Rodgers Report, deliver on the tease from yesterday's show about a closer look at Broderick Jones' performance against the Cleveland Browns, talk about the continued use of heavy personnel for the Steelers offense and Arthur Smith. But first, let's dig into the rivalry in the AFC North, not between the Steelers and the Ravens or the Steelers and the Browns, between TJ Watt and Myles Garrett for the throne as the best pass rusher in the NFL over the last 6-7 years or so. And TJ Watt just continues to win that battle pretty consistently. And that is not going away after his 31st birthday, at least not yet. Watt now 31, finished with 6 pressures, a half sack, 2 QB hits, and a 25.8% pass rush win rate. On Sunday, Myles Garrett, his counterpart, finished with 1 pressure, no sacks, no QB hits, and a 20.8% pass rush win rate. Both quarterbacks get the ball out quickly, or got the ball out quickly in the game. They tend to do that, and they did again on Sunday. The big difference in those counting stats, obviously, is Watt had 38 pass rush snaps to Garrett's 24. Dylan Gabriel threw the ball 52 times, so you just have more opportunities to get after the quarterback. I think Watt had other advantages that are worth mentioning. Cleveland was throwing the ball more. The Steelers were blitzing a lot more than Cleveland was. And Watt just frankly has a lot more help on the defensive line than Myles Garrett does. Garrett is getting more help. I think Alex Wright is fine opposite him, and Mason Graham has looked good in his rookie year, but it's not quite the embarrassment of riches that the Steelers now seem to have now that they're healthy along the defensive line. But Watt has gotten back to, after what I think was a slow start to the season, he's gotten back to destroying bad offensive tackles. Not to say he can't do well against good offensive tackles. He didn't in week 1 against first-round pick Armand Membu and the Jets. That's week 1. Like, you can kind of throw it out. He didn't play in the preseason. But when he gets the opportunity against a bad offensive tackle, which he has against Cleveland and did against Minnesota, 7 pressures against the Vikings, 6 against Cleveland, it is starting to look like TJ Watt. And in the beginning of the season, I was concerned that it didn't, especially after the big contract they gave him. If he's doing this, that contract is going to age fine. If this is just a product of the Browns throwing the ball 52 times with a rookie quarterback and not having much answer at offensive tackle, especially after Jack Conklin left the game with a concussion with it, which I think is worth mentioning, right? He's going against backups in each of the last 2 matchups because the Vikings also lost their right tackle early in that game. But, I mean, Watt's still getting chipped. He's still getting double teamed every once in a while. And he is continually outproducing Myles Garrett in their head-to-head matchups. And I think it's also worth mentioning that before talking more about the Steelers defense, because this is really just a way for me to kind of discuss the pass rush and the interesting things they're doing that I'm really excited about. I've wanted them to do for a long time, but to Myles Garrett, he whipped Broderick Jones anytime he got a chance. He didn't get a lot of chances because the Steelers, as I'll talk about later with their jumbo sets, often had Spencer Anderson or Darnell Washington or both flanking Broderick Jones when Garrett was over there. When the Steelers used play action, when they booted Rodgers out of the pocket, when they used sprint outs, they did it away from Myles Garrett. Like, they schemed around him really well. And that's what teams do against TJ Watt. So you need guys along the rest of the defensive line to clean it up. The Browns don't quite have as many of those. So Garrett is less of a factor. Like, if you're still making me pick one of these guys to be on the team, on any given team for any given season, I'm going to take Myles Garrett. I think he is the more talented player, especially as TJ Watt continues to age. But Watt is consistently more productive. Like they always show that graphic when these two play of most sacks, most forced fumbles, most QB hits, and like everything since 2017. And it's all TJ Watt number one and pretty much all Myles Garrett number two. I think there's like one category that he's number three in. Watt has always been the more productive player. And it's the argument of sacks versus pressures. What is actually most valuable? And obviously a sack is more valuable than a pressure, but a pressure is still valuable. And if Garrett is able to rack them up at a higher rate than Watt, maybe that's more important. What's most important is that the Steelers just buried the Browns yesterday, and they did it with the help of TJ Watt, their highly paid edge rusher, the second highest paid defensive player in the history of the NFL now. So we don't have to necessarily belabor that point because, as I said, this was a way to get into talking about the Steelers' defensive line. And it is not just the most talented it's been in Pittsburgh in a while, because I think Derek Harmon continues to get better and better. And the return of Highsmith to health gives the Steelers the ability to play these NASCAR packages where they get all their fast players onto the field. They get after the quarterback, which I love. It allows them to put Herbig, mugging over the center or matched up with a guard or use Watt different ways. Watt still mostly just stays put. And that's fine when you're moving around the other pieces, right? That's not fine when it's just a 4-down rush. You know where TJ is going to be and it's nothing diverse. Like Jalen Ramsey's second sack in the game, which Jalen Ramsey had 2 sacks in the game. When's the last time the Steelers, probably Mike Hilton, is the last time they had a corner have multiple sacks or even that many pressures. They knew as Cleveland got into their condensed sets, they could blitz Ramsey. And on his second sack, they did it while dropping both of their defensive tackles into coverage. That's awesome. Like it got a free run at the quarterback. It's a rookie quarterback who's not comfortable setting the protections. Yes, he has a veteran center, but he looked completely overmatched. Like the Steelers not only whipped Cleveland on the field, I think they also whipped them on the chalkboard. And that it's not often you can say that about a Mike Tomlin defense. Like a lot of the time, a Mike Tomlin defense is we're going to out talent you. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. In this one, they out-talented the Browns, but they also out-schemed them and out-leveraged them in a lot of different ways. That was really exciting to me. In the past two games, 3 weeks, we've seen Cam Hayward as a stand-up rusher on the edge on early downs. Like, okay, yeah, get really big with it, because if you can stop the run early downs, then you're going to be able to, and you still trust Hayward to get after the passer if they're going to pass on first down. You're going to get teams into 3rd and long, and that's an absolute nightmare when you have Watt, Highsmith, Herbig all on the field, and you could have them all with Hayward and Harmon, or just Hayward, or just Harmon, or just Keanu Benton, who looks really good. Once again, I am just loving the versatility of that line. And I think it's funny because the Steelers, the way they build rosters is very like piece it together one for one kind of a thing, where it's like we have this position filled. Okay, now we have to draft. Like the Steelers continually, especially under Colbert, drafted for need in such a annoying way. And every team says we'd love to take best player available. It's just really hard to do. I think Omar Khan did it with Derek Harmon. It was also a need. But instead of going, oh, we have Herbig now, we can trade Highsmith, right? Because we have another outside linebacker. No, because you have 3 of them, not only are they fresh, but you can put all 3 on the field at the same time. You can do really weird and different stuff. You can be more unique and diverse. And they're actually using that to their advantage, which I really love. And to Mike Tomlin's credit, you can't do those things when you don't have the personnel to. And I don't really know the last time they had this level of personnel on the defensive front, on the defense in general, probably. It's a pretty talented high level group. It's the most expensive defense in the NFL, and the first time I've said that not in a sarcastic tone, because it looks like a really talented group that they can do unique stuff with. And that's clearly the idea and part of the reason they brought Ramsey in, because they loved that he could play nickel. He played 10 snaps at free safety. Like, there was stretches of that game where they took Thornhill out and Ramsey was your deep safety, like the deep post safety. He can do that. He can also be a really good blitzer. Like, he's a big body, physical player who can still run. Use him a bunch of different ways. I love it. Like, I love the way they're using Ramsey. I love the way they're using these multiple outside linebackers, and it's reactivating TJ Watt, who maybe he is still losing a half a step, but it's not going to matter if Herbig is killing on the other side when he gets one-on-ones, and Herbig's eventually drawing double teams, because TJ Watt can still win one-on-ones. So I am really excited about what they did on defense in this specific matchup. Will they continue to do it? Will they continue to be this exotic? The blitz rate was pretty high. You can kind of get away with that against a rookie quarterback. You can't get away with that with every quarterback. You probably don't want to blitz Joe Flacco that much. And you probably don't need to with that Cincinnati offensive line on Thursday night. So I think they should eat the Bengals defense or offense alive. They should. With the personnel that they have, Joey Porter Jr. coming back allows you to feel more comfortable with Ramsey back in the slot. You don't need Eccles there. And they've gotten so much more diverse schematically on defense than they were last year, at least in small doses, right? Generally, some of the core tenets are pretty much the same, but they're doing some of the stuff I've been asking them to do for a while. So it's worth commending. And now to a question that I was posed yesterday by my co-host on Instant Reaction Shows, Mark Powell, that I kind of just opted out of. And I think for good reason, because it's hard to get a good look at how a specific offensive lineman played before you go back and watch the tape. And I went back and I watched the tape. And is Broderick Jones getting better? Simple answer, no. No, he's not. He might be getting worse. There's a chance that was the worst pass blocking performance of his entire career. If you listen to PFF, which a lot of people don't, but I think they're, better than most opinions about players. And at least it has a database of these games. Yes, Broderick Jones allowed just one pressure, but his PFF pass blocking grade was 16. That's out of 100, folks. I think a 16 on a test in school, like just even as a standalone grade, would maybe get you expelled. Like a 60 is an F. He got a 16. Not good. Not a good pass blocking grade for Broderick Jones. It was the worst of the season for him, the worst of his career, and the only other under 20 pass blocking grade he's ever posted, which there are two. Yes, there are. Was week 15 in 2023 versus the Indianapolis Colts, when he allowed 5 pressures and 3 sacks. It's over. If you didn't think it was over coming into the year, it's over. He's not an NFL offensive tackle, not a starting caliber one. He's still a ridiculous athlete. You can see it all over. His technique, his mechanics are all a mess. And maybe the Steelers will let him go and he'll sign in Philly, or he'll sign somewhere else with a good offensive line coach, and he'll turn into an elite player or like a really good guard or something. He's not an NFL starting caliber left tackle right now. The Steelers are not going to make him into one. Broderick Jones is a bad player. He was so sloppy. He got beat constantly and quickly. Anytime he was left on an island without help, toast. Didn't have to be Myles Garrett, toast. Every time. He can't anchor against power. He lunges at everything. He gets turned around. He makes bad decisions. There was one time he just let a free runner go by because he was focused on the defensive end dropping into coverage. It's mental mistakes. It's technical mistakes. It's every kind of mistake you could imagine. He's a bad football player. He is a bust. I don't blame Omar Khan for drafting him because it's hard to find offensive tackles with the quickness that he has, with the mobility that he has, but he did not get developed here. And maybe it is the move from left to right to left, but maybe he's just not that good. Right? Because he's been at left tackle all year. He knew he was going to be the starting left tackle all training camp. Left tackle is his preferred and comfortable position. And maybe it's Pat Meyer is a bad offensive line coach, which I don't even need this, as I could find other evidence of that. But regardless, the Steelers have to find another left tackle for next season. They would love, I'm sure, to find another another left tackle for this season, but that just doesn't happen. Those guys aren't out there. I thought they should have drafted an offensive tackle, maybe not on day 2, but certainly on day 3. They didn't. I think maybe there's some regret about that. Spencer Anderson is good in the role he's being used in as the additional offensive lineman and a swing tackle. I wouldn't remove Anderson from that role because he seems really comfortable in it to replace Broderick Jones, especially because the fact that Anderson plays that role helps cover up the issues that Broderick Jones has at left tackle, because you can so often put Anderson on that left side. You can put Darnell Washington on that left side to help with double teams and chips and everything. But next year, you gotta draft one, sign one, something. And offensive tackles are insanely difficult to come by. That's why Dan Moore got as much money as he did from Tennessee. And I'm missing Dan Moore right now. And I never thought I would say that. He was much better than Broderick Jones. And Dan Moore was arguably the worst left tackle in football for every year that he started for the Steelers. And Broderick Jones is worse. And now you see why Rodgers Jones couldn't beat out Dan Moore, right? Because now he's got the runway. He's 3 years into his career, and there's just nothing there. It's not going to happen. And maybe it's unfair to make this declaration after the game he played Myles Garrett, right? Because who blocks Myles Garrett? But again, on the tape, it's not just Garrett. It's anybody. And it's bad in the run game too. It's a little bit better in the run game, but it's not good. You can't, like, the trade deadline's coming up, and we always do this where, oh, trade targets and like who could be available in the trade deadline. Nothing really ever happens except for the 1 year the Rams traded for Von Miller. And I don't think there's going to be a ton that happens this year. Maybe some small moves. Teams aren't going to give up offensive tackles. Cam Robinson got traded last year from Jacksonville to Minnesota. He was not a good offensive tackle, and we saw that yesterday because he was with the Browns and he got whooped. And there just aren't guys out there. It's hard to develop offensive tackles in college. It's hard to identify and draft them. The Steelers took a chance on one, and okay, it didn't work out. That's fine. Like, move on. After this year, you got to cut ties because it's not going to happen. And I think if you consider how poorly his left tackle is playing and how underwhelming the line as a whole has been this year, you could make a case that Aaron Rodgers has been even more impressive this season, working around the constraints of the offense that he's in. If it wasn't for him being so reliant on the quick game, and I think that limits the upside of this offense ultimately and makes it probably not week over week as sustainable as you'd like. If he wasn't playing that way, he'd be sacked 5 times a game. He may not be playing anymore because he would have gotten lit up. The fact that it's not as big of a talking point is all a credit to Aaron Rodgers. Because Broderick Jones has been as bad as he's ever been, and he has 3 years of bad tape put out there. So it's a problem. It's not one with an in-season solution, but long term, it's one that they need to solve. And that brings us to what one of the only actual in-season solutions. There's no personnel in-season solution. There are schematic in-season solutions, and I think Arthur Smith has done a really good job of finding them. The Steelers continue to run out heavy personnel as much as anyone in the NFL and are doing a really good, it's just super efficient. It was not a 1-week experiment against the Vikings. This is going to be their offense now. And I love it. I think it's such a good idea. And it's, been borne out how successful it was. They started the game with jumbo personnel, Darnell Washington and Spencer Anderson, both out there. They motioned Washington across the formation, had him on a C-gap insert, looked like a block, and then it was a nice corner route, and it would have been a touchdown if he didn't fumble out of bounds. Didn't lose it, of course. The fact that they can hit explosive plays out of this formation is massive. The fact that it's not a true run tell is huge. It's going to make it one of the more efficient personnel groupings. It's already the most efficient for the Steelers, but going to be one of the most efficient, I think, in the NFL. And they are playing the highest rate of jumbo 11 personnel. So that's 1 running back, 1 tight end, and then an extra offensive lineman. So really it's kind of 12, but the extra offensive lineman doesn't count. So functionally it's 11. Still 2 wide receivers. Only on 5.5% of their snaps, but that's leading the NFL by a lot. Number 2 in the NFL in EPA out of that personnel, 0.22 EPA per pass, 0.43 EPA per rush, and a 27% pass rate. So they're running the ball, yes, out of it a lot more. You're going to run out of it a lot more. You have an extra offensive lineman on the field, but they are still throwing the ball. They are still accessing explosives. They're able to play action off of it. They're forcing teams to put heavy personnel on the field, and then they're able to attack it in the passing game. Especially the DK Metcalf crosser, right? Think about that. Play action, get Rodgers on the move. There are more linebackers on the field in the middle of the field than safeties or nickel corners. And Metcalf just finds space in the intermediate and goes. The Steelers are playing the 3rd highest rate of jumbo 12, so 12 personnel, so 1 running back, 2 tight ends, with an extra offensive lineman. So kind of 13, right? 6.25% of their snaps out of jumbo 12. Number 5 in the NFL in EPA out of that personnel, 0.35 EPA per pass, 0.09 EPA per rush, 41% pass rate. So they're passing even more out of what is ostensibly 13 personnel. And again, I love that. That's why it's hyper efficient. You get the big bodies out there and you can still attack it because two of those tight ends are Darnell Washington, who they're terrified of in the run game, but can catch the ball, can stretch the field, can do a lot of things as a pass catcher, and Jonnu Smith or Pat Freiermuth. And Freiermuth hasn't been used very much, but Jonnu can take a jet sweep for 10 yards. Like I think he doesn't look like he has very much burst left, at least this year. They're not really getting him in space. He's not bringing a ton of tackles. I've been pretty underwhelmed with Jonnu. But as far as a second tight end, which is what he is, because Darnell Washington is their tight end one, as far as a second tight end out of jumbo 12 personnel goes, he's pretty explosive. Like he can do a lot of things with the ball in his hands and allows you to throw the ball that much. So I just love them leaning into this idea of our offense is freaking huge. It's not just Anderson and Washington and Freiermuth and Smith. It's DK Metcalf's 225 pounds, 240 pounds. He could be a defensive end. It's Ben Skoranek blocking on the perimeter. It allows you to run to the perimeter from condensed sets so well. It allows you to still stretch defenses out and have the threat of verticality because Metcalf is on the field, right? Maybe you can get them to pull a safety out of the box. The Steelers are running into stack boxes at a pretty high rate. And I think it's one of the higher rates by FTN Fantasy in the NFL. But when you're doing it with that many big bodies, it's not as big of a problem. And when you're doing it to set up play action explosives or play action deep shots, or even just, getting DK Metcalf one-on-one down the sideline, which is proving to be a pretty reliable play so far with Aaron Rodgers, I think this is their offense. This is the core of their offense. And everything else gets built off of it. It's the most efficient the Steelers have been on offense in years. And I think Rodgers played really well largely because of it. They're running the ball the best they have in years because of this personnel. It just makes a lot of sense. It marries things together. Arthur Smith offensively is not the most complex in terms of they have all of these different route concepts and combinations and all of these different run schemes. No, he runs inside zone, outside zone. He'll do a little bit of power, but there's no counter. There's no other. And in the passing game, he wants to hit deep shots. He wants to attack the middle of the field. They're not doing that as much because Rodgers kind of doesn't really get to the deep intermediate part. But that's fine. They're marrying it together. They're marrying this with the quick game. They're marrying it with the rollout play action. I think it would be a really hard offense to defend, regardless of the lack of skill players on it. I think it'd be a really hard defense to game plan for, or offense to game plan for as a defensive coordinator. And that's all you want. That's all you could ask for. This is wonky, a wonky roster offensively. It's weird to have this many good tight ends and basically no number 2 receiver, especially when Calvin Austin is out. And to find something like this midway through a season, unveil it, and evolve with it, that's just high-level play calling, offensive coordinating. I think Arthur Smith, we talked about it yesterday, but I think he's just good. He's really good. And the Steelers have a better chance maybe than I thought coming into the year because of that. And because the quarterback play continues to kind of get better. I'm still not going to get over my skis with this start. They're beating bad teams. They should be beating bad teams. The tough part of the schedule is still coming up, but as the AFC North falls away and Rodgers looks better, you start to get your hopes up a little bit. I'm not going to go so far as to say this team will win a playoff game, but I feel better about it than I did a month and a half ago. I certainly feel better about it than I did after the Patriots game when I thought this was one of the worst teams in the NFL, because that's what they were playing like. It's a lot better, and a lot of it has been coaching. It has been cleaning up the run fits on defense. It has been maximizing all your talent on the defensive line with different sim pressures and exotic blitz packages. It has been unleashing Jalen Ramsey as a blitzer and as a safety and using him all over the field. And it has been discovering this heavy personnel stuff on offense. It's all you can ask for from a coaching staff, really. I mean, you could also ask for them to go for it on 4th and a foot to close out a game against Minnesota. But between, again, from Monday to Saturday, and this week, Monday to Wednesday, it's really, really what you can ask for. So, good stuff by the Steelers coaching staff that I'm encouraged by, and I like to see. Lastly, before we get to the final thing today, final topic, final segment, which is everyone's favorite, the Rodgers Report. If you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Pittsburgh Steelers football, please consider subscribing to the Still Curtain podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We really appreciate your support. Again, a lot of shows this week, Wednesday and Thursday for an instant reaction. Having Mark Powell join the show this season has just been a ton of fun, and I think really made those instant reaction shows even better than they were last year. So be sure to be subscribed and be there on Thursday night. And now, the Rodgers Report. This was his best game by far as a Steeler. And I have been a hater. I have been a Aaron Rodgers is washed guy. And I'm not going to release that grasp too much, but this was by far his best game and showed me a lot. Let's figure out why it was his best game. Rodgers entered this week with the highest check down rate in the NFL at 19.2% per FTN fantasy. And that's a big reason that I'm kind of been out, right? Because I think he feels pressure. I think he wants to get to his check down way too early. I think it limits your ability to attack the intermediate parts of the field and deep parts of the field, except off of just go balls and you can't really create explosives if he doesn't have the threat of scrambling or creating outside of the pocket. And this week, he really wasn't a check down Charlie. Like, there was some of it, but only three throws behind the line of scrimmage. The Steelers cannot run screens, and they have never been able to run screens. And I don't know why, because this offense would benefit from some screens, but I digress. He actually has a really low, something that's impressive about Rodgers this year. With how quickly he's getting the ball out, he actually has a really low first read throw rate per FTN, which is a fun stat that they have. Near the bottom of the NFL, I think he's 25th among starting quarterbacks, right near Josh Allen and, a quarterback who is creating all the time outside of the pocket. Some of that is just he's speeding through his reads a lot, and they're living in quick game. And if you're running some of these, just a bunch of stick routes, he can go 1 to 2 to 3 out. And some of it is he's 41 years old. He's a future Hall of Famer. He can process this game at a pretty high level, and that allows him to get to the right answer more often than many others. I think Arthur Smith is now figuring out, give him some of those answers a little further down the field and buy him some time by designing some rollouts and designing him out of the pocket to increase the time to throw a little bit, to increase the depth of target. And that's what we saw against the Browns. It was his second longest time to throw of the season. Week 2 was his longest, which was just kind of an aberration. But at 2.65, Smith did a really good job rolling him specifically away from Garrett. I talked about how they use that heavy personnel to send a lot of traffic and doubles and things at Garrett. But also when they rolled him out, it was specifically designed to go away from the Browns' best pass rusher and find him some space outside of the pocket, doing it out of heavy sets. He also torched the blitz, which is a veteran quarterback thing to do, but something he wasn't doing with the Jets last year. There were legitimate concerns about how well he was doing at the line of scrimmage, checking protections, getting into the right play with New York. And his inability to torch the blitz was a concern because that's what veterans kind of tend to feast on, right? They can see the picture so well that, okay, you're bringing extra bodies. I know where to get the ball out. And you just made it less traffic to get the ball there. You know, as you bring more pass rushers, there are fewer players in coverage. And Rodgers is making teams pay this year for bringing extra rushers. Yesterday, 5 completions on 7 attempts against the blitz, 468 yards, and 11.6 average depth of target. And I think that's the key, right? On such a small sample, that can be skewed up a lot by a, 20-yard bomb or a throw down the sideline. 9.7 yards per attempt. He is not just, here's the blitz, get to my check down quick, which he was earlier in the season. Here's the blitz. Let me see if I can push the ball downfield and burn them for this. That's what you got to do. And I think he's getting more comfortable. I don't know what is causing that. Like, he is now pretty far out from the Achilles injury. Maybe he's just feeling more comfortable and confident. That's kind of a 2-year injury, especially for aging guys. I don't know. I don't know the answer for why that changed, if it's going to continue to change, but that is a big reason this was his best performance. Again, I mentioned only the 3 throws behind the line of scrimmage. He finished with a 7.7 average depth of target for the game, which is his highest of the season. And a lot of that, too, is not just attacking against the blitz, but attacking on play action. The play action usage made more sense. Play action for much of this season, outside of week 1, when they used it to hit a bunch of deep touchdowns, has been Rodgers play fakes, feels pressure, didn't like that he had to turn his back to the defense, and now he's going to get to his check down. His average depth of target on play action was obscenely low. The play action usage was very low because they weren't getting anything out of it. And again, I think Arthur Smith is starting to figure out how he's comfortable play actioning, right? How are you comfortable getting out of the pocket? Do we have to do more of this out of shotgun? Can we do it under center? Regardless, it all is making more sense. And he went 6 for 9 for 77 yards and a touchdown, 8.6 yards per attempt. It was his highest play action rate since week 1, and by far his highest average depth of target off of play action, which I loved. They need to use play action. They need to use rollouts to access the deep and intermediate parts of the field for anything other than a DK Metcalf go ball down the sideline. Because, yes, that's a great play, and if you can get single high, they're still not running the ball like that well to really dare teams to get out of cover 2. And Rodgers talked about this in the week. Like, part of why they're not attacking downfield a lot is they're not getting a lot of single high safety. And if you're going to only stretch the field vertically with go balls down the sideline, then you kind of need to get a team into cover 1. That's part of why they're going so heavy and trying to establish the run. It's working, but it's not dominating. So you need other ways to access explosives in the passing game. I think they're starting to find some answers for it. And Rodgers is 12th after this week, is now 12th in the NFL in EPA per pass off of play action with 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. Some of that is, of course, skewed by week 1 when it was basically get to the red zone, 1 play action pass. The Jets are so bad on defense that it's an immediate touchdown. But this week he was super efficient with it, and I think that's really promising going forward. So it was the Steelers' best performance all around for the year. That should be the case against one of the worst teams in the NFL. They played another of the worst teams in the NFL in the Jets, and had one of their worst performances, though. So I'll take it. I liked what I saw from Rodgers. I liked what I saw from the defense. And I especially liked what I saw from the coaching staff. Now, can they do it on a short week? Because the Steelers have not been good on Thursday Night Football historically. They lost to Jameis Winston in the snow last year, and that was a really costly loss. You kind of can't lose this one against Cincinnati and Joe Flacco. So what are you bringing out? Are you simplifying this thing? Is it going to look like it did when the Steelers were playing poorly, being really basic on defense, being, stuck in the shotgun and quick passing game on offense? Or are you going to take some of these core tenets that you have shown over the last 2 games and continue to implement them against a bad team that you should beat on a short week? We'll find out. This is a really old team, a really old roster. Old teams don't tend to do well on Thursday night. And the Steelers are a significant favorite. They should absolutely beat the Bengals. I don't feel entirely confident that they will. Not because I don't think they're better than the Bengals. They absolutely are. But just the randomness of the NFL, Thursday Night Football of it all. And it's a huge one. Mark and I talked about that yesterday. This feels massive. If you can get to 5-1 while the Ravens are on their bye at 1-5, okay, now you feel really good about your chance of winning the division because Cincinnati and Cleveland are not going to do it. If you're at 4-2 and Lamar Jackson's coming back healthy and the Ravens have made a trade that I don't hate on defense, sending Odafe Oweh to the Chargers for Alohi Gilman, a safety, I think it maybe has a chance to free up Kyle Hamilton to do a little bit more after, they had some injuries that forced Malachi Starks to play a lot. And I think there's a chance they can turn things around. That team still terrifies me, even with their defense in shambles. If you can get to 5-1, though, I start to feel really good about your chances of winning the division, barring a total collapse. If you're at 4-2, I'm scared. So it's going to be a big one on Thursday night. I'll be back with Mark for an instant reaction show. And then next Monday, be back again for another deep dive. That one will be a little bit longer after the game. So maybe we'll shake it up a little bit, see if we can get a guest or something for you. But I'm excited about that one as well. Thank you for joining the show today. Thank you for listening as always. And until Thursday night, make sure you check out Wednesday's show with Tommy and Shane. But for me, until Thursday night, have a good one and go Steelers.